Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here on European Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message, it comes from a translation, and the narration of that translation reads like this. Hello, my brother, how are you? Can you please post my own story is anonymous? So my brother, I left my own village when I was still a young man, even though I was already married, and God had actually blessed me with 3 kids already. So I got married to my wife at a very young age. You know, when you are staying in the village, sometimes you get married at a very young age because you do not know what to do anymore with your life. This is exactly what happened to me and my wife. We started dating from a very young age. Then we impregnated. Then I impregnated her, and she came and she started staying with me as she was my wife. So I had to leave her when I saw that I was not able to provide for anything for her. And when I found out that I could not provide for any of her needs, I then decided to leave the village so that I can come to the city. In our family, my father's brother, he was the one who had a grinding mill, and he had a small garage whereby they were fixing cars. So I had learned mechanics from a very young age. I actually knew how to service a car all by myself. I was fully experienced by the time that I left the village. When I arrived in the city, I then started staying with one of my uncle's friend. He was also a mechanic, but I saw that this man, he had such an evil wife, because from the day that I arrived, they started treating me very bad. My uncle's friend was a good man, but he was controlled by his wife. So anything that his wife will say, that is what he would agree with. The very first day that I arrived, I was denied food to eat, even though I was really hungry. I was told that I could only eat the next morning because in those days, things were really bad in our country. So food was really scarce. So they said that they cannot afford to cook again. So I went to bed very hungry. Yet throughout the day, me and my uncle's friend, we had been on the road. They said that they had only left food that was enough for him. It was not going to be enough for the both of us. When I went to bed, my brother, as I was busy sleeping, I then woke up, because when you're hungry, you can't sleep properly. So throughout the night, I had to ask myself a lot of questions. I questioned myself, like, was God even there? Because the thing that I was facing, the poverty that I was facing, it was just too much. My parents, they were believers, and they had suffered throughout their lives, especially my mom, the way that she used to believe and the way that she used to pray to God, but still nothing would ever change. And I kept on questioning myself throughout the night. I questioned myself as to why God had decided to be silent on my mom whenever she was praying, as well as why God had decided to go silent on me as well, because I was here, I was desperate. I even begged God to answer me, because I had left my wife, who was desperate and who had kids that we needed to take care of. But throughout the night, even though I was praying, God decided to remain silent on me. My brother, when the morning came, that man then took me to his workshop. I was happy, but during the day, I then found out that there was nothing for me to be happy about, because this man, he was just going to be using me. He said that I didn't know how to do mechanics properly yet, so he wanted to retrain me. I asked him, like, for how long? And he said that I am the one who is going to tell you if you are fit to start your own small mechanic shop or not. So this meant that even if I was going to work for this man for 10 years, he will keep on telling me that I am not yet an experienced mechanic. I then decided to leave his place so that I can do my own thing. When it was time for us to return back to his place, I just told him that there was someone that I was waiting for, and I never returned back to his house. And then I stayed in the street just a little bit. I then approached this other man who was having a 24-hour garage, and after he had tested me, and when he saw that indeed I was a good mechanic, he then hired me. And from there on, I then started going to church again, because I grew up in a Pentecostal church. When I went to that church, I then gave the deacons my transfer letter that I had gotten from the village, and they were really happy about it. So I continued with my role as a church secretary. You know, when people are giving free will offering, then the church secretary is the one who will count the money. So now we were working as two church secretaries, with the one that I had found who was already a church secretary. Then she was a woman. Then the ushers that were there on that day were the ones that would assist us with the counting of the money. So I was the one who was then given the responsibility to go and place the money that would have been given by people as the free will offering into the pastor's office. This was like a thing that was always done when we were having a church service. And I had done this thing over 1 million times when I was still in the village. But my brother, one day, and when the pastor was in the office, I then took that small basket that contained the free will offering. I don't know if me catching the pastor red-handed was by design, or maybe there was a lot of things that were going on, but I caught my own pastor. He was busy kneeling down, and the way that he was kneeling down, there were candles that were placed in front of him, and these were not your white candles, they were black candles, and he was busy worshiping. Then there was a traditional pot that was placed on his right side. Each and every time that he would pray, he would dip his hand into that traditional pot, and he would remove some things that I could not properly see, because I didn't enter into the office after I had seen him doing this. I then returned back home, and I was truly heartbroken, and I said, so this is the reason as to why God had never answered any of my parents' prayers. It is because there are rituals that are supposed to be performed if you want to speak with God. So when I returned back home, I now had another motivation. I said, if this is the case, then let me return back to my roots. So I used to hear my father saying that our ancestors, they came from Mozambique. This was during those days when a lot of migrants were coming from Malawi as well as Mozambique. I then gave myself an idea that if me being in Mozambique is there in my blood, then let me return back to the land of my ancestors so that they can assist me. But where exactly I was going to, I didn't even understand. As I was tracing my family history, I then found out that some of my uncles, they were actually Muslims, and they were there in Harare. So I then went and I spoke with them. After I had spoken with them, and I told them that as for me, I can't become a Muslim because I was a Christian, and I was asking for them to help me, to give me any kind of blessings so that my life can be a little bit better, because these relatives of mine that I later found they were staying in Harare, they were very wealthy people, and they had a lot of businesses. They promised to bless me, and I was supposed to return back to them. So when I returned back to them, they gave me these other cards. I don't know what they call these cards, but maybe someone who is a Muslim can assist me. These cards, they use it for prayers. Let's say that if you have an enemy, you can actually use one of those cards. Then you can cast a spell on your enemy's name. Then the person will experience some challenges. So I was given some of those charms that can actually give you money. But for you to have the money, you will have to start a very small business or something like that. The money will not just come on its own. I was then given a piece of paper. This uncle of mine, when he gave me that piece of paper, he was actually laughing, and he said that this paper that I have given you, don't you know that this is real money? I laughed at him because this was nothing but a newspaper that he had cut into several pieces, but he had cut it as if it was money. I laughed and I said, this is no money. He said, here, take it. When you are going back home, pay for the transport fee with this money. And he kept on saying that it was money, even though to me it was just a piece of newspaper. I took it and I was even doubtful. My uncle then said that, I know that you are not going to do it. He said, you are scared. Fine, let's do it together. On that day, me and him, we then went together and we got onto this bus, and I saw my uncle as he took out from amongst the bunch of newspapers that were cut to make them look like money, and removed one knot that was just a newspaper anyway, and he gave it to the bus conductor. To my surprise, the bus conductor said, oh, why have you decided to pay me with such a huge amount of money? Because you are going to take all of my change that I have. Then my uncle remained quiet and he just smiled and he looked at me. So when the bus conductor had collected the money from the people that were in the bus, he then returned to the place where I was sitting. In the meantime, I was just feeling very nervous, but my uncle said that everything was under control. He then gave my uncle a lot of money. I can say that he was like the one who had paid for the whole bus, and he was just given all of the money that the other passengers had paid. From there on, I then started believing that indeed this thing was real. That is how I started to use those charms whereby you can actually create money out of thin air. My brother, I was then given some oil. This oil that I was given, all that I have to do is to rub myself when I go out. Like if I am looking for clients, then I can rub this oil like on my forehead or on my face. Anyone that I would speak with, I will be able to convince them to strike a deal with me. It doesn't matter who this deal is going to benefit. Even if it is going to benefit me, the person will actually think that he is the one who is robbing me. And this thing, I have seen it that it is used a lot by criminals, those ones that sweet tongue you so that you can give them your own assets. They use that type of oil that my uncle, who was a Muslim, gave me. He gave me a lot of stuff, my brother, and when I had made so much money, my uncle then told me that I had to buy at least a property in Mozambique, which I ended up buying. And he just said that just in case, I want you to buy some kettles. So here in Zim, I have purchased a lot of cattle. There are so many that I have lost count, because over the years, they have been like producing new cows. So I don't know how many cows that I have, but before he had passed away, he just said that I want you to purchase a lot of cattle just in case. So I don't know what he meant when he said that just in case. Another thing that I want to tell you, my brother, is that most of the people that have done these rituals using this way, they have a lot of money that you won't even understand where it comes from. And some people, they have like some businesses, so that you can think that the money is coming from the business, but this money, it is like they just take it from other people. Then they will just have a lot of money that will be appearing from nowhere. This is my own confession. Yo, dear listeners, right there was a message that was sent to me. Then we had to give you this translation.